Hi, so this is a reading about Buddhism. The next subject we're going to talk about when we talk about India. So I imagine that you have an idea of what you think Buddhism is. And to be honest, I always thought that Buddhism came from China until I really started delving into it. So that might be true of you too. You should be listening. You can be reading along. This text is also available up on the Schoology page. So here we go. Chapter 16. So this stone carving represents the Buddha, founder of the Buddhist religion. I'm going to read through this, and you can be reading along. In chapter 15, you read about Hinduism, India's first great religion. In this chapter, you'll learn about another great religion that began in India, Buddhism. Buddhism is based on the teachings of the Buddha, which means awakened one. The Buddha was a man who lived in India from about 563 to 483 BCE. Before earning the title of Buddha, he was a young prince named Siddhartha Gautama. At the age of 29, Prince Siddhartha walked away from his royal life and went in search of spiritual peace. During his journey, he learned a great deal that changed his life. By sharing these truths with others, he began the great religion of Buddhism. Buddhism was different from Hinduism in several ways. It was not based on complicated rituals and beliefs in many gods as Hinduism was. Instead, it was a way of life based on simple teachings. Unlike ancient Hinduism, Buddhism embraced all people regardless of their caste. It taught people how to reach enlightenment or happiness that comes from the knowledge of deep truth. Buddhists believed that once they reach enlightenment, they would no longer be reborn again and again. In this chapter, you'll learn about Buddhism through legends that are told about the Buddha's life. You'll also find out what Prince Siddhartha discovered and how his teachings became the basis of Buddhism. So I'm going to try and roll this with the pictures. You'll notice these pictures are the same that are up in my room. They are actually from Southeast Asia, not the pictures of the Buddha, but it's the same story. Prince Siddhartha was born 563 BCE in the northern part of India, near the Himalayan mountains. His father, Suddhodana, was a powerful king. His mother was the beautiful queen Maya. One night before her son was born, the queen had a dream, and in the dream she was carried high over the Himalayas to a silver mountain and set on a silver couch. A white elephant with 6 tusks walked around her and then struck her right side. The king and queen asked the Brahmins, the Hindu priests, to explain her dreams. "You are carrying a child who will be a great man," they told the queen. The Brahmin declared that the prince's future had 2 possible paths. As a prince, he could rule the universe. But if he left royal life to see the suffering in the world, he would become a Buddha, one who is enlightened. The queen gave birth to Prince Siddhartha in a garden. Stories say that the prince's birth, a soft, warm rain of heavenly flowers, fell on the baby and his mother. The infant priest looked a few years old and could already walk and talk. Siddhartha began his remarkable life by taking a few steps and declaring, "I am the world, I am the leader of the world and the guide to the world." So now we're going to go on to the prince's royal life. Prince Siddhartha's father wanted his son to be a great and powerful ruler. He was worried about the Brahmin's predictions. If the prince saw the world suffering, he might give up his royal duties to seek a spiritual path. The king decided to protect his son from all the horrors of the world, and he raised the prince in a world of peace, wealth, and beauty. He provided his son with only the finest gardens, houses, education, and food. Servants took care of the prince's every need, from washing his clothes to playing music for his amusement. The prince enjoyed his early life, yet he always felt curious about the world outside the palace walls. Some days he'd sit under a rose apple tree and think about the world beyond his reach. At the age of 16, Prince Siddhartha married a beautiful young noblewoman. The wedding feast lasted 7 days and 7 nights, and for 12 years the couple lived together in perfect peace, enjoying the prince's many palaces. And when Siddhartha turned 29, they had a son. The prince finds 3 forms of suffering. After Siddhartha became a father, the king gave him more freedom to travel outside the royal palace, and during his trips, the prince discovered 3 forms of suffering. And on his trip, the prince and his chariot driver saw a thin man who walked with the aid of a stick. "Why does that man look so terrible?" the prince asked. His driver replied that the man was old and he told the prince that everyone's body weakens as it ages. On the second trip, the prince and his driver saw a man crying out in pain on the ground. "What is the matter with that poor man?" the prince asked, and the driver explained that the man was sick. And on the third trip, the prince saw a group of people walking slowly down the road. The group carried a figure wrapped in white cloth. "Death came for that man," Siddhartha's driver said quietly. "One day it will come for you too." The prince was deeply troubled by his discovery of aging, sickness, and death. Unable to sit at home with his thoughts, he set out a fourth time. This time he met a man who glowed with inner peace and calm. The man was an ascetic. An ascetic was someone who gave up worldly pleasures such as possessions, fine clothes, and money, and even shelter. "How can you sit so peacefully when there is so much suffering around you?" the prince asked the man. The ascetics replied, "To be free of suffering, one must give up desires, pleasures, and comforts of the world. I find peace by helping others find peace." So, ascetics believe if you give up everything, you're not going to have any more suffering because you're not attached to physical things. The prince becomes an ascetic. Prince Siddhartha's experience with suffering changed him forever. Suddenly his royal life seemed empty, and he wanted to find the happiness and peace the ascetics had found. Siddhartha decided to give up his old life and find enlightenment. Becoming enlightened meant finding deep truth and being free of suffering. One night the prince asked his faithful driver to take him to the forest, and at the edge of the dark woods, Siddhartha removed his royal robes, sandals, and jewels, and he cut off his hair with a knife. He put on a simple robe and kept only a small bowl for alms or gifts of food. Wishing his driver farewell, Siddhartha began his life as an ascetic. Siddhartha met other ascetics as he wandered the forests and fields. Like him, they wanted to understand the nature of the world. They believed they could reach enlightenment through meditation. While meditating, the ascetics sat quietly and focused their minds and spirits on spiritual questions. Siddhartha quickly became an expert on meditation. The ascetics also denied their body many basic needs. For example, they stayed up all night without sleeping. They sat in the hot sun without shelter. They held their breath for long periods of time. They fasted or stopped eating for many days at a time. They hoped to find spiritual truth through self-denial. Siddhartha followed the way of the ascetics until he was pitifully thin from lack of food. Legends say that he became so skinny that he could touch his stomach and feel his backbone. Eventually, he became unhappy with this extreme way of living, and he had not yet found a key to enlightenment. The prince becomes the Buddha. Siddhartha had learned that giving up bodily pleasures did not bring enlightenment. He decided to balance himself between the extremes of pleasure and pain. He would be neither a prince nor an ascetic. Instead, he would seek the middle way, a path to enlightenment. The prince's new way of thinking caused the other ascetics to leave him, but he was content to be alone. He was not yet enlightened, but he was on the right path. A full moon rose on Siddhartha's 35th birthday. He bathed in the river and rested quietly in a grove of trees, and when he awoke, he had a strong feeling that he would soon become enlightened. Then a grass cutter gave him 8 handfuls of soft grass as a present. Siddhartha walked until he reached a tree that has been known as the Bodhi tree, and he placed the grass at the foot of the tree and sat down. He vowed to meditate under the tree until he reached enlightenment. While Siddhartha meditated, a wicked god, Mara, tried to frighten him. Then Mara tried to tempt him by sending his 3 daughters, Discontent, Delight, and Desire. Siddhartha resisted them all, and he meditated through the night about the nature of reality and how to reach nirvana, or truth, happiness, and peace. At night, he went on his mind filled with the truths that he had been seeking. He saw his past lives and the great cycle of rebirth. He saw the importance of karma. Eventually, he saw how to gain freedom from endless cycle and so to end suffering. By morning, the young prince had become the Buddha, the awakened one. He'd reached enlightenment. The truth that the Buddha discovered under the Bodhi tree are the basics of Buddhism. They're called the 4 Noble Truths. The Buddha would spend the rest of his life sharing these truths with people. The Buddha's teachings. Besides the Buddha's 4 Noble Truths, the idea of things changed. The Buddha saw the events. When one finds pleasure, it does not last forever. One suffers when it is lost. To end suffering, he taught people should travel the Eightfold Path. This path follows the middle way. So the Four Noble Truths. Suffering is present in all things, and nothing lasts forever. Number 2, suffering is caused by cravings, desires, and wants. 3, the way to end suffering is to give up cravings. And the way to give up all cravings is to live life according to the Eightfold Path. So the Eightfold Path. Right understanding, developing a deep understanding of the Four Noble Truths. 2, right purpose, live a life of selfishness, love, and nonviolence. Be careful and truthful in what you say. Do not lie or gossip. Do not kill, steal, or lie. Be honest. Do not work at a job that causes harm to people or living creatures. Promote good actions and prevent evil actions. Be aware of, but not to attach to your emotions, thoughts, and feelings. Focus your mind with practice with such meditation. Okay, stop there.